preparation plus opportunity equals success. A lot of times we wonder why we're going through what we're going through. And when we ponder that and we take a victim mentality and we're not led of the Spirit, we're neglecting the lessons that the Lord wants to teach us so that we can be prepared for what He has for us.
Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I really hope this episode helps you learn and master the skills you need to grow your leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as I post a new session so you don't miss a single episode. I'd also greatly appreciate any reviews, likes, and shares that you can give me. It just helps me extend my reach to more people. So leaders, I know just how frustrating it can feel when you're in the weeds of work or ministry and life is chaotic, you're struggling to feel effective, and you're just not enjoying leadership as much as you could be. And so to help you, after many years of leadership and executive coaching, I've developed a framework called the Christian Leader Blueprint that'll guide you to find clarity in your life and leadership. It'll help you gain a better rhythm of life. It'll help you see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and you'll produce more productive relationships. It's a step-by-step guide to leadership transformation. And I have that in two formats now. I have a free short guide that you can find on ryanfranklin.org, and I have a book, The Christian Leader Blueprint. And you can find that in any format, including an audiobook, wherever you buy your books. I have a few more things on my website that you may be interested in, so just head on over to ryanfranklin.org and check it all out. And now, let's get to our session. Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple show. I'm your host, Ryan Franklin, and today we're diving into a model called the Leadership Sweet Spot with Pastor Akil Thompson. This is his framework that highlights three dimensions of leadership. It's self-leadership, spiritual leadership, and organizational leadership, and how they come together to sort of create the kind of balance that leaders need if they truly want to be effective in the kingdom of God for themselves and in growing their church. Akil Thompson is the lead pastor of Extraordinary Church in Ontario, Canada. He and his wife planted this church in 2018. He brings a unique background in both corporate finance and ministry, which gives him a strong blend of leadership strategy and pastoral care. He's passionate about equipping leaders and building systems that empower people instead of controlling them. I love that. So with that said, Akil Thompson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my friend. It's good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate you being willing to jump on. Tell me the name of the city that you're in. I didn't even try to pronounce it.
I noticed that. I said he wasn't feeling too bold or daring at that particular moment. It's Mississauga.
Mississauga. It sounded similar to Mississippi, so I wasn't sure.
You've got it. It's adjacent to Toronto.
Okay.
And matter of fact, the Toronto airport is in Mississauga. And it's a nice sized city. We've got almost 1 million people in Mississauga alone. So
that is a nice sized city. Huge city. Well, let's jump in if you don't mind to start us out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe some key moments in your journey that has sort of shaped how you think about leadership today?
Absolutely. My wife and I just celebrated 25 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
So we started thank you. We started when we were 15. We had a great time. It was our first time to get away without the kids. My family's very close. One of my daughters is away at university and my son is about to go away, but it's the first time that we did something, just the two of us, in quite a long time as far as an extended vacation. But it was great. We had a great time. I'm from the States, and I have kind of had a ministry path as the Lord has just led. I've been in Richmond, Virginia. That's my hometown and city, and my heart will always beat for Richmond. And then the Lord saw fit to send us to Austin, Texas, for a few years. Then we were in Clearwater, Florida, which was just like a dream come true in every conceivable way.
Mm-hmm.
And living what I tell people, this is so funny, bro, but if you ask me what my dream job is, it's to be a highly paid assistant pastor. And maybe the compensation wasn't as close to where I wanted it to be highly paid, but it was a dream in every other way. And then I had preached up here in Ontario a few times, and I just said something I should have never said. I think it was snowing in May, and I said, who on God's green earth would be dumb enough to live here? And the Lord was like, oh, that's so sweet. He has no clue what I've got planned. And anyway, I fell in love with this area. And so we've been here since 2018. And by the grace of God, we just planted our second campus, if you will, in the heart of Toronto.
That's tremendous.
It's in its infancy. And we're going for it for his, for his glory. As it pertains to leadership, I have always been passionate. It's been instilled in me at a very young age to pursue excellence. I didn't grow up in faith. But when that began to become worship, when I came to know the Lord, and it was like, okay, I'm going to go the second mile. And Jesus teaches a principle about the second mile. And I'm sure this is not original with me. I don't know who to give credit to, so I'm not trying to take away credit. John Maxwell, some leadership guru said it, but there are no traffic jams when you go the second mile. And that language is just like, oh, yes, that's just kind of who I am. It's just in my DNA. I really want to do my best. And now I see that as just like, okay, the totality of my existence. Lord, I want to please you. And so I would say that was probably what brought me into spaces amongst the leaders. I've never been satisfied. I tease folks, kind of grew up under a father who was notorious for like one-liners. And one of them was just like, there's no such thing as can't in the Thompson dictionary, or we're allergic to average. And that's just kind of, those are the mantras that I think have driven me. And by the grace of God, maybe made a bit of a distinction as to character, results, impact, and the desire to add value. So I would say that is maybe the infancy of what brought about or led me into different spaces and opportunities to serve. And then when you begin to understand the kingdom, and you realize, oh, it's upside down. You're never made, less by your service, but you're made greater by your service. And that's how you add value. And so learning the kingdom and contrasting that and living that out and unlearning some things that you think about leadership, that's kind of been that journey. So here we are and trying to make a difference for his glory.
Well, I can identify with quite a bit of your story. We don't know one another very well. This is our first conversation other than a text.
Got a lot of trust here.
Well, we can always, edit something out if we need to, but I'm joking.
That's great.
But we do have a lot of, I can identify with a lot of things that I love. I love going the extra mile. I love the fact that you're a man of excellence. And that's what I've heard, and which is one of the reasons why I reached out to you, is because I've heard such excellence behind your name. And then I've also, I mentioned to you before we hit record that I was in a church plant. I won't name the church plant, but it was a church plant in Northern Virginia. And I didn't realize that you were from Richmond, Virginia. So we probably have we've probably crossed paths at some point, didn't even realize it.
Didn't even realize it. I'm absolutely certain. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Well, I want to get into this leadership sweet spot that it's a framework that you've been working on. I think you've been working on a book for quite some time, and maybe coming out with it in the near future. And I'll be one of the first to check it out. But I really would like to kind of dive into that a little bit today. And if you wouldn't mind, just tell us how the leadership sweet spot kind of came about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to try to share this concisely because my father's a storyteller. I don't know that I'm a good storyteller, but I'll try not to embark upon story time. But
I'm all for
it's real.
stories, for
Okay,
sure.
good. Then let's do it. So I can remember when I was graduating high school and getting ready to go into university, and I wanted to work for a local community bank. In particular, I'll just name the bank because they're no longer in existence, Central Fidelity. They had tuition reimbursement. And I thought, this is going to be great because I don't want to have any student debt. And so I remember applying for this job and I wanted to get into marketing, Ryan. I thought that would be a great fit for me. And my sights were set high. And the HR director, Tammy, she called me back and she said, "Hey, Akil, you didn't get that job, but don't be discouraged. We've got the perfect job for you." And I thought, she really sees the best in me and what I can be. So I was like, I applied for here. We're going up.
Hmm.
And I said, "What is that job, Tammy?" And she was like, "A security guard." And I thought, that's not quite what I had in mind. I was like, you know what? We really, I don't know where we've tumbled down the ladder here. And so I was so discouraged. I did choose to take the job because, again, the tuition reimbursement.
Hmm.
And I just remember teasing her. I was like, "Hey, just so you know, like," I was like, "Do I get a gun at least?" Because I was like, she was like, "No, you don't get a gun." She's like, "You do get mace." And I was like, "I'm not chasing anybody else down for somebody else's money." I was like, "That's not how this works." She was like, "No,
Yeah.
you'll be at the corporate office." And I remember I was just kind of sulking because I had fallen short of my goal. And my father said something to me I'll never forget. He said, "Son," he said, "you don't have an office, you're mobile." He said, "But why don't you spend more time where the executives are?" And he said, "Just get to know them." And I
Hmm.
thought, I'm going to do that. And so I would spend most of my time on the second floor. And
That's
I can
smart.
remember uh, getting connected with the CEO, the CFO. We'd get on the elevators. And normally, when these folks get on the elevators, everybody's posture changes. And I'm the security guard, and they would get on and they're talking to me. And we're talking about, football or their kids. And it changed everything because I
Mm.
realized then and there that I had a responsibility to steward where I was and to embrace the process of what God was doing
Mm.
in my life.
That's good.
And within a few months, I received not even a phone call. Somebody just came up to me and she said, it was the marketing director. She said, "Akil, what are you doing being a security guard?" And I said, "Linda, I'm saying the same thing." She was like, "Come see me on Monday and I want to talk to you." And she gave me a job and ended up getting in marketing there. And since then, I learned a lot about relationships and connections. I thought to myself, is this how this really works?
Yeah. I,
All throughout my banking career, I never really interviewed for a job. It was just a conversation,
yeah.
and these things happen.
If I could butt in there
Yeah,
just a bit
please.
and just say, embrace the process. Wow, that's a mouthful right there.
We have to because so oftentimes things can be aborted
Hmm.
uh, before we ever realize it. And, so much happens in the kingdom. Let's talk about kingdom here for a moment. Everything is seed form.
Hmm.
Everything is seed form. Jesus says it. He says, "Hey, look, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, and it's going to grow and it's going to be a force to be reckoned with." But everything starts in seed form. And if we're not careful,
True.
we will miss the cultivation, we'll miss the burial, we'll miss the planting, we'll miss the pruning because
And
we've got
none
our
of us want
sights.
that. None of us want to go through that process.
Thank you for your candor. Because I'm like, "Ooh, I don't." And I was like, I would gladly sign up to like just put me right there in marketing, but
Exactly.
that wasn't the case. And even then, when I got accepted or when she extended the role into marketing, I was so eager, excuse me, to leave the security guard role. It was really just kind of telemarketing.
Hmm.
So it wasn't, I don't want to make it sound glorious. It was like there was this process before I began to manage millions, which I did in acquisition banking. There was this 13-year process that I learned. Well, in all of that, in banking in particular, when I was in the retail side, I learned something, which was really just sales. We wanted to get people in our sweet spot. And the
Hmm.
sweet spot was if we could get you to be a transactor, which would be a checking account, a saver, and a borrower, then we had you in our sweet spot. And that
Mm.
likelihood meant that we would not only be able to retain you as a client, but that we would be able to penetrate your spheres of influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day, my goal was to be a commercial banker, which would manage businesses of 300 million in revenue and north of that. And
Yeah.
I was operating in a role in acquisition banking at the time. And the director came to me and he said, man, want to talk to you. I think you'd be a great fit. And I thought, here we go again. Thank you, Lord. And Ryan, it almost happened verbatim like this. I immediately pull up the requisition and I'm like, I'm going to check out how much money I'm going to be making because this is where I want to be. I was like, this is the role. Looking and I'm like, wow, this was in '07. I'm like, this is great money. I'm doing well, but I'm like, now I'm going to get a 7 Series BMW and I'm going to pay cash for it type money. And I'm like, this is great. I go into the conference room for a little privacy. I'm just kind of visioneering and thanking Jesus. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. And the Lord tells me to resign. And I'm like, resign and do what, Jesus? This is not you. Get behind me. Make a long story short, I wish I could tell everybody that I resigned and went away. I didn't. About 90 days later, some things are happening. All of this favor that I had amassed was just gone that the Lord had given me. It's slipping through my fingers. I couldn't clutch it tight enough. And I'll never forget my regional director. He's like, Akil, what is going on right now? And I was like, Dave, I don't know. And the Lord spoke very clearly to me. He said, I told you to resign. You will not return to full-time secular employment. I didn't know what to do. I was the youth pastor at our church, but that was my pastor just out of generosity and for kind of meeting with kids. He'd give me a little stipend to Starbucks and ice cream. So I was like, Lord, is somebody going to give me a check to start a church? I knew nothing about ministry. I was just clueless.
Yeah.
And a full-time ministry, I should say. So for 90 days, we just sat at home. We prayed and just sought the Lord. And I had the Lord, my pastor wanted me to pick up a speaker. He was coming in. This was before the advent of like social media being prevalent. I think maybe we had MySpace. So I'm dating myself. But anyway,
that's a few
I picked
years
this
ago.
guy up. Yeah, just a few years. It was just yesterday. So I picked this guy up and I told my wife this. I said, I do not want to talk I just don't want to talk about anything spiritual. I said, I'm just kind of bummed about where we were. We're just kind of living off of our savings and just waiting to see what's going to happen. And I said, I'm just going to talk to this guy about natural stuff. So we're talking about, I actually used the word carnal, but I said carnal stuff. I don't want to talk about anything spiritual. So I pick him up and we're 3 minutes away from the hotel. This is exactly how this happened. I said to myself, Ryan, yes, no spiritual conversation. And he turned and looked at me. I never knew this, never met this man, never knew him or anything. He turned and looked at me and said, thus saith the Lord. You think you've been called to be a banker in the natural, but the Lord has deposited things in you for people who are spiritually and emotionally bankrupt. And they'll need to make withdrawals. He starts reading my mail. I'm crying.
My goodness.
I'm weeping. And he's like, my God, son, you're going to kill us. You got more faith in these people driving opposite traffic than you do God. And I was like, you're right. And so that night he calls us in after church. He called us in. He said, I want to meet with Akil and Sarah. And my pastor was like, sure. I don't even know my pastor knew all this at this time. And he just said this, I'll be done. But he said, I worked for the 4th largest bank from an assets perspective in the nation. And he knew none of this. He said, the Lord is done with, and he said, the bank. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you heard me. He said, the Lord raised that bank up to bless you and to bless his kingdom. And his hand is off of that bank now.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what is happening? And he said a few more things. And within 6 months, bro, that bank required a government negotiated buyout. It's done, no longer in existence. But the Lord told me, we have since went into full-time ministry and it was a leap of faith. But the Lord told me, he said, if I have to send strangers to give into your bosom, I will do that. Anyway, out of all of that, that process, that's where the leadership sweet spot really evolved and has been developed. And looking at what are the sweet spots in our lives, organizationally, individually, spiritually. And so that's how that was born. And it's kind of a reflection of the deposits the Lord has made, and hopefully the deposits I can make in the lives of others.
Yeah. So, the concept has tons of implications, obviously, for church growth. And I want to go there in just a minute. But before we get into that, I'd love to unpack each of those three parts.
Okay.
And let's start with self-leadership. Why do you explain that? Why do you describe it as the soul of leadership, and what is that all about?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. This is what gets me really jazzed up. So I apologize if my enthusiasm, I'll try to bridle or temper myself.
I love your enthusiasm. It's contagious.
Thank you. All right. The soul is the center of it all, especially for us, our mind, our will, emotions. Scripture reveals that to us, right? And so if I don't lead that well, everything else that God has poured into me, that others are pouring into me, that experience is pouring into me, that will leak out. And I don't want to be a leaky person. As a matter of fact, I kind of have a mantra. I get very frustrated. I shouldn't say I refuse, but I quickly assess, am I investing in a leaky person right now? Because within a week later, a month later, they're going to need to be filled up again.
We call them buckets with holes.
Buckets with holes. That's it. Leaky. That's it. I call them leaky, but it's a bucket with holes.
Yeah.
And self-leadership is all about humility and awareness, a rhythm, so that my inner life isn't like whacked out, but yet I'm living this duplicitous nature, which we can so easily fall into that trap. And so that's why I talk about self-leadership being so important. If I'm being ruled by ego, my own ambition, if I'm allowing unhealed hurts to drive me, and that's my motivator, no amount of gifting, no amount of strategy, none of that will compensate for being led well, leading ourselves well. And a lot of times we think, oh, well, leadership is great. I remember this is the distinct difference. For many years, and I'm talking through this and writing through this in my book. For many years, I vilified managerial leadership. But you need to have both. I used to vilify, management, pencil pushing, numbers driven, want nothing to do with it. You want to cast vision and inspire and connect and communicate. And you need all of that, but you need both. You need both. And really what I found is that the manager in me, as I have grown that or allowed that to grow in me, it's now positioned me to really have an honest self-examination. And so, it protects who we are, and we have to lead ourselves well. And before we can lead anybody else, this is the irony of it all. It's interesting. We actually buy into the notion that we can lead others before we lead self. Yeah. And we can't. Jesus says something, then I'll be done. I know we'll have a conversation about a few other things, but he says, hey, if any man is going to follow me, there's a prerequisite. He must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And we try to get that in reverse. So we try to skip denial. Yeah. We try to skip the cross and just follow Jesus. And when we do that, we're following a manufactured Christ, an idol that we've created by hands. So self-denial and ministry and leadership that is cross-centered, if you will, Christ-centered, will always focus on others, how we can make others better, how we can position others. I was telling somebody, I finally got the idea, or the revelation, at least for me. I'm really dense. But the Lord was like, we're planting these campuses. And I was like, Lord, we need an individual. We need a successor, if you will. I heard somebody say ministry success or succession looks like success. And I was like, oh, that's great. And he was like, no, son, that's a cute little cliche, but that's not it. He was like, ministry success or a successor looks a lot like ministry development. Just live out Ephesians 4:11 and 12.
I love that.
And develop people. And then you don't have to worry about a successor or succession. And so it's kind of turned some things upside down for me where I've had to unlearn some things. But a lot of that, by the grace of God, has been a result of, okay, Akil, you need to develop a growing yes to the Lord and a resolute no to yourself.
I love that. It's and I would say that that's probably where the main place that my Christian Leader Blueprint model intersects with your sweet spot model is in this self-leadership realm. It is a vital part of leadership, and I love the fact that you brought out so clearly that you can't lead others unless you lead yourself. And we have to have a good rhythm of life. You know, I reached out to you this summer to do this podcast, and you said, "Now's not a good time. I'm in a season that I can't do this. Can you reach out to me again in the fall?" I love the fact that you gave me a no, but you gave me an option later. That's that tells me that you likely have a good rhythm of life. You have pre-planned, you have margin, you know what you're doing with your time versus not. That's good self-leadership, you know.
Man, well, thank you. I'm trying. I learned something maybe 4 or 5 years ago, early on in my life. And I don't recall, I think it was Chad Beach who said this. So again, it's not original with me, but I was on the precipice of really walking in this understanding, and he helped me put great language on it. But when I was younger, always scheduled according to my availability. Meeting after meeting, it was just almost like a euphoric high. And then I've gotten to the place now where I don't schedule according to my availability, but I schedule according to my energy, my virtue.
Yeah.
How much is this going to cost me?
That's good.
In preparation up
Really
to throughout. And so now I do a block schedule. And at that time, I was really in the throes of investing myself in the development of pushing this concept further. But I was like, how much is this going to cost me if I include this in my schedule and my rhythm now? And so now when I meet with folks, I already know, depending upon who it is and the nature of the meeting, they have 3 questions they have to answer. It gives me some context. I'm like, yeah, this is going to happen, but this is the only meeting for the day.
Would you be willing to give us those 3 questions as a side note?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? It's like, hey, let me pull them up here exactly so I can share this with everybody.
I would love to know.
We'll do it.
We're going to take a rabbit trail here, folks.
Absolutely. Let's do it here. So the first one is, in one sentence, what would you like to talk about? Second is, by the end of our time, what outcome would feel like a win for you?
That's good.
And then the third one is, anything sensitive or time critical I should know beforehand.
I love that.
And
that's
all 3
that's
questions
simple.
have to be answered.
Give them again. One quick time.
Yeah, sure. In one sentence, what would you like to talk about?
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that question is because you have to be able to say it concisely. They need to think through it and not just take me on a huge rabbit trail for 2 or 3 hours. This is not get everything off your chest, with Pastor Akil. The second thing is, by the end of our time, what outcome would feel like a win for you? I got to know the win.
That's good.
So once we know the scoreboard and we know, we can figure out what we can do to get to the win. And then the third is, anything sensitive or time critical I should know beforehand.
Love it. I love it. That's a great 3 questions to filter people. And I love the focus that you put there. It's going to get them laser focused on what needs to happen in that meeting.
Yeah. I will not meet with someone for more than an hour.
Yeah.
If I can avoid it. Clearly there's crises.
Yeah.
I'm not referring to those. But if it's just, it's like, hey, let's get this done in an hour and let's move on. If we can do that, that's the win.
Yeah. So getting back on off of our rabbit trail, back on the right path. Anything else on self-leadership before we move to the next one?
No.
Okay. Well, spiritual leadership is your basically your part 2, which you have a Venn diagram, which I love because it's not really a part 2. It's just as important as the first one. But spiritual leadership, what does that look like for a leader to truly be on God's agenda and lead others towards His kingdom agenda? You've already given us a story of that was pretty phenomenal, but dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, you said it, and you said it so well. It is exclusively getting people on his agenda.
Hmm.
What does the kingdom look like? And I think, first of all, we have to have a good understanding of the kingdom and demonstrating the kingdom. And then how do we get people onto his agenda? Well, the first thing is we have to get them off of their agenda.
Hmm.
And so once we can get that dislodged and disrupted and abandoned and say, okay, you know what? I understand if I want biblical results, I've got to do it the Bible way.
That's
And here's,
can
I'm
I
sorry, go ahead.
can I probe into that just a little bit before you move
Sure.
on?
Yeah.
I'm just, my mind goes to, okay, uh, we're ambitious people. I know you're an
Sure.
ambitious person. I can feel that from you. How do we get off of our own agenda?
Listen, death to self. I remember when talking about agendas and ambitions,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking to myself, the Lord spoiled me. I didn't grow up in faith in Christ. And so when it came time to transition from what was happening in Richmond, Virginia to Austin, Texas, I'm thinking to myself, oh man, here we go. And for a variety of reasons, and no reflection of the local church or the leadership, it was one of the more difficult times of my life that I was not prepared for. And that's so often because I tell people all the time, I know what I said, but I don't know what you heard.
Hmm.
And the Lord he can speak to us. He's a speaking God. But oftentimes when he speaks to us, we hear what we want to hear and we see what we want to see.
Yeah.
And I remember in this particular time in Austin, great things were happening in many regards. Fruitful, productive ministry, partnership. We celebrated it. Thought I'd be there for the rest of my days and maybe even planting a church there.
Hmm.
But it was really one of the more difficult times. And I remember just praying like, Lord, I think I'm done. I think we missed it. I missed it. And I said, Lord, this cross is killing me.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget, he said, that's the point. And I was like, whew, in that. And so, the Lord reminded me of a couple of things in that season that have stuck with me. He told me, he said, I remember one of the things early in my walk with him. He said, I've called you to bridge the races together. You're going to be a bridge in different cultures and races.
Hmm.
And I thought that was great, Ryan. I said, and I reminded him of it. I said, Lord, you told me I would be a bridge. And when he told me that, I had envisioned like the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm like, people stopping by, taking photos of this monstrosity that's bringing people together, connecting people. He said, you saw what you wanted to see. He said, I did tell you that. He said, but what you failed to realize is people walk on bridges, they step on them, they spat upon them, they drive over them. Some give no regard for the bridge. They're more concerned about their destination.
That's so true.
And in all of that, it began to help me realize, oh, this is really less about me, more about my development and my character reflecting. I've
Hmm.
learned God is more interested in my character than he is my ministry. And
So
so
true.
I had to get over myself. And that's been a process. I'll even go as far as to say this: when we planted this church, and I'm a planner, I'm a relatively proficient one. Uh, the Lord told me a couple of things. He said, I'll never forget this, and I won't unpack the whole call. But he said, after he gave me the call and gave me this vision, and I'll never forget, it was supernatural. But he said, don't you ever refer to these people as your people. He said, this is my church. I will build it. He said, but what you can do is you can lay down your life for your wife, as I did for the church.
Hmm.
He said, why don't you start there?
Wow.
He said, I'll never forget it. And then secondly, he said, I am not releasing you to plan. I said, Lord, I've got a team of people here. We're ready. I said, what do you mean I can't plan? He said, if I let you plan, he said, and you'll have results. You'll have some results. He said, you'll think this is more about you
Hmm.
than it is about me. He
Wow.
said, I'll never forget. He said, I have issued a call. And he said, if you'll let me, my spirit will lead you to people who are willing to abandon all for the call.
Mm.
And so in that, for years, right? Years. I did no planning. It was not until I have to go back and reference this. It was either 3 years ago or 2 years ago that he released me to plan.
My goodness. And
So
that's difficult for you because you are a planner.
I am a planner.
If you resonate with assistant pastor more than senior pastor, and you love organizational leadership, I mean, you're a planner.
You're a planner. I'd much rather develop simple systems and processes that can help undergird us to get us where we need to go and to sustain us.
I can relate. I'm feeling the tug of war within you that I imagine that you felt, over the last from 2018 to 2022.
Yeah,
that 4 or 5 years of just tug of war and inside, because I'm sure that you were wanting to be released, but you didn't feel released to plan.
I didn't. It wasn't until we've now become friends, but a gentleman had come by. He was ministering and he was speaking to I always invite people over the home for what I call a growing conversation. And he was just flowing in the Holy Ghost. And as he was done, he just looked at me. He said, Akil, the Lord has told me he has now released you to administer the plan. You can now develop and write the plan. I'd never told anybody that I had not been able. I'll never forget this. The first Sunday, this is what the Lord showed me. And this is why it's so important that we're spirit-led, because the Bible says they that are led by the Spirit of God will be known as the sons of God. And it's so uncomfortable to be led. But what that does is that gives us direction and not necessarily a destination. The prodigal son, right? The reason why the father was looking and ran to him is he hadn't arrived at the destination. The prodigal son was like, hey, when I get to my father's house, I'm going to negotiate and barter and say I'm not worthy, treat me like a slave. But he was just headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
And the Lord did the rest. That's the key. I think if we can just get people pointed in the direction away from self and to him. So that first Sunday, Ryan, we had 65 people. And it's not about numbers. It's about doing his will and obedience. That's something the Lord, and I'm not minimizing numbers.
Yeah.
I know it's a quantifiable, valuable metric, but obedience is the key. Even in our planting, because I was like, the Lord, he reminded me, I'm administering the plan, right? So I'm like, Lord, we're going to plant, here's a couple things funny. I said, Lord, I want to plant 12 churches for you, 12 churches. I had only told my wife that. The same Sunday I had done that, we had a guest speaker and she's preaching and she's just flowing. And then she turns and looks at me. And I'm that guy that if I'm not preaching, I'm all over the church. I'm on the steps. I'm right by the preacher. I'm looking him right in the face like there's nobody else in the room. And so I'm just doing what I do. And I'm like, man, this is challenging me and convicting me and blessing me. And she looked at me and she said, you told the Lord you wanted to plant 12 churches for him. And I was like, wow. I was like, yes, ma'am. And she said, he told me to tell you to triple it. I think, I think that was to
my goodness,
dislodge any notion.
And you just spoke that in front of thousands of people, right?
Right. And that's why I'm giving this preface. I think he did that to dislodge any dependence on self, whether or not that's fulfilled.
I love that.
I think he was trying to say,
Akil Thompson couldn't do that, could he?
No. Akil, and I think he was just trying to say, whether it's not about the number. What I'm trying to do is dislodge self, disrupt self.
That's powerful.
Get self out of the equation. And so it's been a journey in that sense. But please.
I love, if you don't mind me butting in here, I love the fact, 36 churches, who plants 36 churches? Very few people have ever planted that many churches. It's, that's a massive number. That's taking your vision and making it a God-sized vision, because it's not going to happen unless he's involved. And I love I've always encouraged people when I do leadership coaching. I've always encouraged people, focus on a 3 to 5 year vision.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about, a lot of people do 10 plus or 10, 20. No. Don't even worry about that, because you know what? The Lord makes the earth round, that old analogy, so you can't see too far down the road. I think God can give you, I find it helpful to have a vision, like a carrot, 3 to 5 years,
Yes.
that it gives you motivation, it gives you energy, gives you something to plan towards. Routines and goals can be focused on that. But, our vision, I mean, I can't even imagine what the Lord can do in my path in 10 years from now. So don't even think about that.
Don't even think
Does that make
about
sense?
it. Yes, it makes perfect sense. And I love that. I do believe he gives us glimpses, but this is where I tell folks, there's such a difference. There's so many things that I've learned in my journey of, the distinction between a good idea and a God idea. I remember as I was driving up here, we were relocating to Mississauga, and I was going to do a leadership weekend for a church, ironically, in Northern Virginia. This church has been established and not a church plant, at least in recent years. So the Lord gives me this as I'm just driving. He was like, there is a strong distinction between a good idea and a God idea. And he's given me the contrast between the two. And he said, Eve saw the tree, that it was good. There is a good that's not of God. And as he's helping me understand this, it brought me to the conclusion that there's nothing wrong. I'm not minimizing good ideas. You're going to see that from different organizations, secular or sacred. But every leader, whether you're leading a ministry, your home, your marriage, church, nonprofit, your organization, you need a heavenly blueprint.
Yeah.
You need a thus saith the Lord. And that usually is born and tied closely to a calling. That's when I tell people, they're called because they either can see the heavenly vision that God has given the leader of that organization and they feel called to it, or they've been arrested, by it and it's been downloaded. And so that's part of that spiritual leadership and really living that out and saying, oh man, this is not man-made.
Yeah.
This is not manufactured by ideas, or this is not something of artificial influence or intelligence. This is God-given.
Yeah.
And people can know and see that and discern that, and that resonates.
Yeah. And that's, and the Lord equips us for that as well. We don't even have to worry about that. He has been preparing me for, I'm almost 46 years old. He's been preparing me for 45 years for what I'm about to step into.
Yes.
And it's our history, it's our giftings, it's our childhood of origin. All of that has prepared us for what he's going to put us, what he's going to move us into. And if we will release our vision, his vision can be implanted in our head. And I love your analogies there for sure.
Well, my dad, and I know I don't want to take up so much time on this, but I love what you said, because this goes back to that early on in my banking career, when it was really more of a job, not a career. It didn't become a career until later or a few years later. But I didn't see that. But my father, here's another one of Ernest Thompson's, one-liners: preparation plus opportunity equals success.
Yeah.
And if we will just realize the Lord is preparing us, and if we will steward and not neglect, right? That's the whole principle. People will say misnomers out there. Well, if you don't use it, you lose it. I don't agree with that. But if you neglect it, there is a cost to pay. I mean, there's a price to pay. And we see that in the parable of the talents. 2 people steward well what God has given them. The other, he didn't lose it. He just neglected it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we wonder, why are we going through what we're going through? And when we ponder that and we take a victim mentality and we're not led of the Spirit, we're neglecting the lessons that the Lord wants to teach us so that we can be prepared for what he has for us.
So before we continue on with the podcast, this episode is brought to you by Christian Leader Community Coaching. Are you a Christian leader who is overwhelmed by the complexity of trying to figure out how to grow your team? I want to introduce to you our Christian Leader Community Coaching program. We have an easy-to-use online platform that has a full archive of courses, supportive community, live group coaching, and elements that are customizable specifically for your team. And I've personally seen the quick and enormous impact that it can have on a team of leaders who are focused together on learning and mastering the skills needed to grow their leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. And we want to be a part of that with you. We want to help you create and implement a plan. The community is very much affordable, but I would say that you can't afford not to have focused growth within your team. Your results heavily depend on it. So don't wait any longer. Let's do this together. Go to ryanfranklin.org and join Christian Leader Community Coaching today. I look forward to seeing you and your team inside the community. And now, back to our podcast.
And so I love that. And so, yeah.
Tremendous. So the third part of the leadership sweet spot is organizational leadership, and it's often where many pastors probably feel a lot of pressure, and some I would have to say quite a few would feel insignificant there. How does this dimension connect with the body in your model?
Yeah, so you talk about the then model. This has got to be, or the diagram. This has got to be probably where most pastors. I was telling my wife this just a couple of nights ago. I don't know many pastors who feel equipped to manage the finances, manage the organizational leadership, develop the systems, the processes, the policies. And I'm going to borrow a quote from, Pastor Rodney Shaw in Austin, Texas. He was like, if the wind is the spirit, then the administration is the sails. And that's the truth. We need the administration to help sustain what the Spirit is doing in the local church, and in it, whether it's momentum, and John Maxwell talks about momentum and it being the great exaggerator. Well, it's unfortunate when you see that not stewarded well, and that's because systems and processes and organization and administration aren't in place to leverage the momentum. And so now we're talking about the execution. When we get to the organization, we're talking about, people don't see it often this way, but I try to give them the understanding that if you are leading yourself and you are kingdom aligned and you're being led by the Spirit, now we're getting to the execution of things. This is how we live this out. And you have to commit to this. If you aren't fanatically committed to it, doesn't mean that you have to execute it all. Like we were talking about earlier, a conversation you have a team of people that assist you with various things. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you have to execute it all, but
you don't have to be good at
responsible.
everything.
Yeah, you don't. So be free. Be good at, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. This is so important, but you do need to make sure you're surrounded by people that are good at, what they need to be good at and what you
that
need.
You're willing to release things that you're not good at to other people.
So I tell people, I've learned this, and I've told my wife and our team, not only will I empower you to do it, but I'll embrace the results.
Yeah.
And so I have to be okay with that.
It may not be what you want, or as good as you could do it even, but it's getting done.
It's getting done. And that means two things. It's a shared success. One, I'm freed up to focus on what I know I'm called to do, which others in the organization may or may not be. And then two, I'm giving someone an opportunity to grow and to develop.
Exactly.
And they feel safe in that development. Many of us?
What's your role in that delegation? What's your role in that delegation?
You know what? It depends.
Okay.
It depends on the nature.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, but I would say
leadership delegation, I would say.
Yeah. You know what? When I'm giving something away and I'm empowering somebody else, I tell people this. When I give it to you, my hope is, now here's it. Let me go back. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, before I give it away, I'm going to make sure I've modeled it.
Yeah.
2, we're going to do it together.
Mm-hmm.
3, I'm going to watch you do it and support you and cheer you on. And then I'm out of the way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that process will look. If I have not modeled it myself, then rarely am I going to empower someone to take that upon. It depends on the dynamics, though.
When you get to a place where you're out of the way, I mean, you're a relational leader. I know you are, I can tell.
Yeah, sure.
You're not totally out of the way, but what does it look like to support somebody and be out of the way?
Oh, absolutely. So here's what I tell. So we meet. So you have to have a cadence or a rhythm of just when you're going to meet with your team and the different levels of your organization. And so that cadence will differ. But typically, everybody has a weekly touch point that they submit. All of my leaders will submit this to me. And it's just through a simple Google Doc that we all share. And we create tabs, and they have 5 questions they have to answer. Very similar to the 3 questions that we ask when you're going to have for my calendar. Now, the 5 questions will vary. Children's ministry is different than guest services. Guest services is different from pastoral care. Small groups is different. But they have that dialogue, and that's how we're able to keep the finger on the pulse to make sure that they're positioned to be successful, because that's really what my job is. If I'm not positioning our leaders and our dream teamers to be successful, I'm failing.
What tool are you using to communicate those 5 things?
Yeah. So right now it happens in Google Doc, but for some we use Slack. So it's either most of our communications are either in Slack or in the Google ecosystem.
Yeah. How often do you have relational interaction other than just, communicating on those 5 questions?
That's I just told my wife, because the organization, the church, is growing to the place where I said, you know what, baby, we've got to pastor our staff, and they will in turn pastor and shepherd everyone else.
Yeah.
So we're at an interesting flashpoint, if you will, where things are the dynamic is beginning to shift, where we're going to provide or offer a greater sense of care for those that are on our pastoral staff in that regard, so that they can intend serve, or, our dream team leaders and the church as a whole. But right now I would say that it's pretty reactive. But it depends on the leader and the individual and the relationship.
You're feeling the shift. I mean, you're 7 years into the church plant. You're feeling the organizational shift. Like you got to plan. You got to build your team to a place where it's an organizational style of leadership. Yeah. What do you feel like would be ideal as you're contemplating this, and you've been out of the organizational stuff for 7 years, I guess. But what are you anticipating, like in the near future?
You know what? There's so much happening right now.
I'm putting you on the spot here, by the way.
You are. And I want to, you know what? I'm not quite sure how I envision this unfolding. What I anticipate is a much more intimate. Now, here's the interesting thing. I told my wife, this is a challenge for me because I'm pretty low maintenance relationally. As a matter of fact, I have some friends who have to, lovingly correct and chastise me, like, hey, bro, this can't be a one-way street here. You've got to, you got to step up and contribute. So I can be pretty low-key, low maintenance, but I also need to recognize not only the need, but the value of being connected and feeling cared for. Fundamentally, everybody wants to be known and needed. Period.
Exactly. They're wanting to feel acceptance.
Yes.
That's a seat at the table. And they want to be valid. They want to be validated and affirmed in what they're doing. And if they don't 1,000%. Feel that, they will either quit or silently quit.
Yeah. And either way, they're going to quit. They're going to resign. And so I said, we've got to do a great job of modeling this. We have a saying at our local church. It's his church, let me be clear, but where we're going to love you big, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the principle of that just means love should make the way in easy and the way out hard. And so we're unapologetic about the care, the authenticity. Here's something else that I feel like everybody kind of needs to know their lane. And if you want to say superpower or your gifting, not growing up in this, I'll never forget. I almost thought about bringing this up, but I said I wouldn't, but here it is. It's just some of the things that drive me, some of the hallmarks of my ministry, those those defining moments. I was brand new. When I received the Holy Spirit, first time at church, right? If you'd asked me, Pentecostal, Baptist, Methodist, I wouldn't have known anything. I didn't know anything about the Holy Ghost already. So when I walk into this church. At the time, the church is massive now, but at the time it was, 30, 35 people. And I'm like, man, my life is broken. I thought the moment this dude gets done yelling, I'm walking out. But instead, I walk up to the front and I get away from all these crazy people. I'm by myself. And when the Lord fills me with his spirit, I'm just like, wow, Jesus is real.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is not a game. I was like, everybody needs to know this. This is like crazy. So I'm bringing people and I'm just coming in, man. Tattoos, choke chain, shorts, flip-flops, and I'm ready to have church. I'm that dude that's kicking off my flip-flops and I'm just going after the worship. I'm pacing and running. Fast song, slow song. It makes no difference. I'm pedal to the metal. The preacher is preaching. I'm up in his face and I'm like, preach, Bishop. And he's like, my God, son, I'm trying to preach. And I'll never forget somebody had come to me. I was so unaware of all this, just so raw and basking, so unrefined. I had come in and I was doing my flip-flops and all that stuff. And this guy says to me, he says, man, he's like, why are you wearing flip-flops to church? And I had never, to me, like when I showed up to church, it was like, oh my God, people are going to be filled and baptized and I'm just all in another place. I'd never even thought about what I'd worn when I was wearing to church. He said, you should at least put on some socks with your flip-flops. And I was like, who would do that? I was like, who would wear socks with flip-flops? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I was like, what? And later, I was kind of exposed to what I call this religious spirit. This spirit that's just predicated in performance. And that I am deeply committed to being authentic. We say we're the perfect church for imperfect people. I grow weary of people dying in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the church is. And we suffocate silently. We wear our mask, we hide things, and we give people the impression all is well. And the next thing you know, did you hear they got a divorce? Did you hear they tried to take the life? You're like, well, how did that happen? Because we're good at faking the funk. I don't want anybody to fake the funk.
True.
He is completely aware that from the very beginning, he has always sought us out. First time mankind fell, he's on the mission. And so, our flaws, he's mindful that we are dust, the Bible says, and he's not repelled by them. He's drawn to them. So I'm deeply committed to being authentic in that regard. And I want people to realize that. So like what we were talking about, a leader should be committed enough to themselves. If we talk about self-leadership, this is not my lane. I'm an organizer and I'm a planner to a degree. Bro, my wife, systems extraordinaire. And she can make it so easy that a 3-year-old can do it. She says, we have a saying that it should be so easy, a dead person can do it. And so we are always reevaluating the simplicity because simplicity is inexplicably tied to scalability. You will not scale and model in growth if it's not simple.
So true.
And so you can't out-organize a misalignment with God.
Yeah.
You and I, we need systems and processes, but it goes back to what we said at first. You got to be tapped in, led of the Spirit, disciplining yourself, denying yourself, and then we can watch God do something pretty cool.
Well, let's talk about that just for a minute before we bring this to a close. I want to ask you, how does growing in those 3 areas, the self-leadership, the spiritual leadership, and the organizational leadership, which you refer to as body, soul, and spirit, or soul, spirit, and body.
Yeah.
How does that directly impact the growth and the health of a church? And you can put that in reference to your church or any general church, however you feel, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think when we get into the sweet spot is the key. So when we get into if we neglect one aspect of this, so if you neglect your soul, you burn out. And how many of us, we've all been there if we're keeping it real, and burnout is not the will of God.
No,
if you neglect to be led by the Spirit, then what do we drift into? Human plans.
Yeah.
And that's not changing anybody's life. That's about as ordinary as it can be. and mundane. And we see the result of that. So if we aren't taking care of the body, if there was a pastor I heard say this, he said, whenever I am frustrated and I can't sleep at night, I'm restless, and it's due to what's happening organizationally. He said, I immediately know that systems and processes and structure, organizational structure, have to change. Mm-hmm. If we don't make those changes, then what happens? Fatigue sets in, frustration sets in. These things, they ultimately diminish fruit and they wound people. And so if we can get into the sweet spot, though, and help everybody else get into the sweet spot of their lane, sweet spot of their gifting, sweet spot organizationally, mm-hmm. It's going to be the shared success. And you have it's synergy, it's kingdom synergy. And, talks about it, but one can put 1,000, two can put 10,000.
Yeah.
And so everybody has to understand that. And that goes back to something that I think is so important, Ryan. And I'm not saying we can close here. We can or we can't. It's up to you. But that goes back to being committed to self. The Lord showed me something not too terribly long ago. Mm-hmm. He said, what do you hear or what do you think when you hear stage 4? And I said, Lord, it's fatal. He said, that's the problem. He said, you typically like to wait until things are stage 4. You think you can pray change through. You think you can wait it through. He said, but I have revealed to you often stage 1, early detection. He said, but because of your unwillingness to have a necessary conversation with yourself, with a family member, with someone in the church, he said, you get to stage 4, and then it's almost inevitably or invariably fatal. He said, this can be avoided. So I think what we have to do is be deeply committed to having difficult conversations or necessary conversations, which sometimes bring about necessary endings, as there's a book. Yeah, but if we can get into the sweet spot, then vision excels. People able to run with it, make it plain and run with it. But when the vision, there's not clarity. In the book that I'm working on, there's an aspect of what I talk about clarity being kind. Yeah. When you communicate clearly, when you have the necessary conversations, it might be uncomfortable at first, but you're really doing everyone a favor, the organization, the relationship, the individual, because they have clarity and now they can run with it. But when things are difficult or ambiguous and they're gray, they're muddied, confusion rises. Yeah. People are going to tire and that relationship is not going to be fruitful. But having all three of these together, I genuinely believe keeps everybody rooted in grace, truth, in order to move together in their sweet spot. So I hope that helps a little bit.
No, that helps a lot. But one last thing, and we'll end on this one. I'm just curious when, a leader who realizes that they're lopsided in one of these areas, what may be some recommended first steps that you would give somebody that feels like that they, you spoke to them today and they're lopsided? What would you give them as first steps to move towards? And we'll close on this.
Sure. I'm an 80s kid, and I probably have exalted that time period entirely too much. We're close in age. I've got you by a few years. Had to reveal that reluctantly. But so I'm going to drop an acronym, but I call it REST.
Yes.
And the first is they've got to return to their first love. Mm-hmm. They've got to return to abiding. Look at how fruitful. Adam had no idea when the Lord put him to sleep, like what was going to happen. He had no idea what was in him. And I think for us, if we're not careful, God can do much more in our rest and us being rested. I tell people this all the time. A tired body produces tired faith.
So true.
And we have to be careful. So return to abiding. And then here's where it gets difficult. When you're rested, you're then in a position where you can eliminate the unnecessary. So often we have so many unnecessary things in our life, but we're not rested enough to even make a difficult or necessary decision.
Yeah.
So return to abiding. eliminate the unnecessary. The next thing for this acronym is S, simplify systems. My wife helped me with this. She was like, babe, because we were kind of on a treadmill. I was like, man, what is happening here? And she was like, I'm going to tell you. And I've been telling you for a while. She was like, we need to simplify. She was like, this is too difficult. She was like, it's not that it's, she was like, everybody's capacity and their aptitudes are different. And it finally got through to me. And I was like, yeah, we've got to simplify and simplify.
And as you grow, you've got to continue to simplify. You got to keep, it's going to get complicated, then you got to simplify, and then it's going to get complicated again. And
we got to simplify.
Yeah.
I've told them, I said, guys, I told our leaders, I said, this is a cycle. And I said, don't take this personal. This is not an assault against your ministry, your fruit, your productivity, your systems. I said, but we've got to come in and parachute in and make this simple across the board. Yeah. And I said, we've got to trust the process and we've got to be fanatically committed to it. I said, it's got to become our magnificent obsession. So I actually wrote what I call a simple Bible, if you will, just for us and our leaders. And I said, if it doesn't fit within this, I said, we have to scrap it. And then the last is train and empower others. So when you simplify, here it is. I'm behind you, man, go. And so I would say that, the sweet spot, you used this word earlier, it's less about balance and more about alignment and rhythm. If we will get in alignment and then get in rhythm with the cadence of what God is doing, I think we'll be fine, because I don't believe balance can ever be achieved because it presumes that nothing changes. Everything is static. But if we can get in alignment, okay, Lord, today your kingdom come, your will be done. If I can get myself in alignment, the organization in alignment, and then in rhythm and say, I'm following where you're going. Yeah. And I'll move at the pace that you move. My obedience will be to the fullest measure. It won't be partial in any way. We'll see God do something cool.
Well, you have some tremendous stuff here, and I can't wait for this book to come out. It's going to be good.
Wow, man, I'm encouraged, and thank you for allowing me to share some of it.
Yeah,
with you. This is near and dear to my heart. And
I appreciate you so much for being willing to.
Amen. Yeah, by the grace of God, it'll be out next summer.
Awesome. Well, Pastor Akil, thank you again for doing this. I greatly appreciate your time today.
Likewise. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And so this concludes our show today. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.